Here we go.
This meeting is being recorded.
Wow, that was fancy. Two. All right, so that one. All right, so we went over buyer leads and everything the last time, correct?
I believe so. I don't remember.
Yep. So we're going to be talking about finding those seller leads today and kind of going through that process. So this is the reminder what successful agents do every day. You're familiar with kind of the class and where we're headed and what we're going to be talking about and what we're going to be doing. But we need to understand in order to be able to get into the idea of lead generating for buyers and sellers, we need to know how to take advantage of, not take advantage of, but understanding motivation, right? Using that as a way to position yourself to have the discussion about what you need to have. Obviously, any phone calls, make sure you're under compliance, follow the do not call list and all that good stuff. All right. Your database is one big place that you're going to be finding seller leads. How do we typically do that? The daily 10-4, you have a great opportunity to find seller leads. Of course, open houses can be a great opportunity as well. Referrals, a great opportunity as well. So you're actually going through two of these right now. So database and referrals, correct? Because they're both
Correct.
listed on your letter, right?
Correct.
So your number one job, ultimately what you need to make sure that you're doing every day to be able to find seller leads is lead generate in some form, right? Most people think about it. They think about it typically as picking up the phone, making those phone calls. And that can be part of your lead generation, but it doesn't have to be all of it, right? You want to spend time every day making sure that you're top of mind and searching, deliberately searching for those people. I highly recommend doing it with your database and your sphere because ultimately that's going to be the quickest and easiest way to get in that conversation. As we talked about the last time, Vinny, it doesn't need to be an intense conversation about real estate, just like what you said this time. You're having that conversation, but most of it isn't about real estate at all. How many conversations did you have about real estate after the initial conversation? Did you get into real estate with anybody?
Just one.
Just one?
And she was just thinking about it.
Okay.
I'd say 25% of my sphere of influence are over 70 years old.
Yep.
So
Okay.
my hope is, if not them, their children or grandchildren.
Yeah. So, of course, children and grandchildren, if not them, are removed. But I would say two things come to mind if you're talking about your sphere being older. If they haven't made their move already, what does that opportunity look like for an older, an older person? And the same thing you've shared with me about what you and your wife are wanting to do. What does that look like?
Well, most of our people around here stay in their homes till they die.
Mm-hmm.
Very few people that I know, just maybe 3 or 4 in the last year, have really moved on with their life.
Mm-hmm.
But most of them are complicit. They're happy with church. They're happy. Their kids are here. They're just, this is their roots and they're not going to leave.
Yep.
So I'm hoping to get them talking, to get their children and their friends to get with me on the telephone.
Yeah, that's exactly correct, right? So in order to do that, there's a couple of things you can think about with a database, like you mentioned. But one of the big things that could be top of mind, or at least in terms of marketing and your information that you're sending out to them, would be the idea of downsizing, right? So if you know your sphere and you know who you're talking to, that could be something that you're providing information on a regular basis. And it doesn't need to be every time you're on the phone with them, just like I said. Your conversations with them should mostly be about them, not about real estate or real estate needs, right?
Absolutely.
You send them the information so they have it. You ask them simple questions like, hey, do you have any real estate needs, or is there anything going on in your life that I can help with in terms of real estate? So those are the simple questions that you add to those conversations, but it's not a focus on real estate. And then that second opportunity, as with any, is referrals. And that's simply asking the question, who do you know? And like we talked about a little bit the last time, I love to pair that with a, hey, maybe you can help me out kind of thing. I have a goal to help my wife retire by the end of the year. Is that the goal, Benny? Refresh me. Is it by
Yeah.
the end of the year? Or am I
No,
putting words in your mouth?
No, before the end of the year. But
Okay.
Janie doesn't want that in our letter.
Okay. Well, it doesn't need to be in the letter.
It's not.
Okay.
But
It can be part of your conversation with the people that you know and trust, because they know and like her and
correct.
want to help, right?
Yep.
So that's all. It doesn't need to be in the letter. That can be the easy way to do it. You don't have to pair it, right? But I like to pair that referral request with a goal, because people want to help you out. They're people you trust and people you know. So you have a goal to be helping your wife retire into real estate before the end of the year. Who do you know that you can introduce me to that I might be able to help with that, with any real estate needs? And it's a simple question. If they don't know anybody, we're not pressuring them. We're not asking them 17 times. We're asking the once. If they have a need, they'll tell you because they refer themselves. If they don't and they know somebody, they'll tell you. It's that simple. And all you do then is, hey, I appreciate you thinking about it. Man, I had a great time catching up with you. We'll get together on whatever the personal stuff was that you need to get together on, right? And then the focus of the conversation stays where it should be, again, on your relationship and on them, right? And you're simply asking the question, and then it can be a conversation if there's a need or if they know somebody, right? But you have to ask the question in order to get the answer. Do you agree?
Yep.
Yep. So if you don't ask the question, you're not getting the answer. And a lot of times, it won't remind them. You won't stay top of mind in real estate, especially with you, Benny, because people think about you for tons of other things, right? In that role that you have, and that's part of who you are, and your relationship with God. That's what people think about when they think Benny. So you want to make sure you're reminding them, hey, real estate too. Like that's part of how I'm going to be able to help others and help you and help your girlfriend. All right. So on top of that, there's other ways. Open houses are a good way to find seller leads. One of the things that I always recommend about an open house, to be able to really find seller leads, is going to be to leverage the open, especially in a market like this. Hey, we've got an open coming up. We've got X amount of people. So we're either mailing the neighborhood, we're door knocking the neighborhood, or we're calling the neighborhood, whatever kind of suits you best. But I usually put a strategy together around just listed, just sold, and open houses. So that's a great way to leverage and find seller leads. So if you're running an open, typically it's, pick a number of houses to do, send a letter out. Here's the open. Of course, you want to get that letter out as soon as possible to the neighbors. Send over, tell them about the open. If you're looking to make a move, we've already got 10 showings set up, or after the open, you could do, hey, we had so many people come through and it's likely to go under contract before you even finish this letter, that kind of stuff. So you want to get that information out there, and it's a great way to find other sellers. Great way to find other sellers. Any questions on that?
Nope.
Qualify and convert seller leads. Of course, you need to find a way to connect with them. You need to position yourself so that they understand that you're the expert and you're there to be able to help and put them in the position to be able to sell the best. So that's a big reason why open houses are a good way, because they already position you as an expert running the open house in the neighborhood. So you already get this idea of being a local agent that understands and knows the market, even if you're not the listing agent or the person closing the contract or whatever. That's not going to necessarily be something. You're already positioned as an expert just by holding the open house. And of course, you'll need to kind of categorize them and what we had talked about before, right? Connecting questions. We need to figure out the who, what, where, why, when, how, and all of that information. A great way to do this is that LPT Mama script. The questions are on there. Tell me a little bit about you. You want to get some forward information. You want to understand what their motivation is. What are you looking for? What do you want to do? Kind of figuring out their needs and wants. Where are you headed? Why are you headed? Why are you leaving? Right? And a lot of my scripts are pairing that with compliments, with one of my great ways to get into motivation, which is one of the super important things, especially for sellers, because think about it. People could become really attached to their home because it's their home. So that it helps you as the agent help them better when you understand motivation and what they're trying to accomplish and what's bringing them to this point. So what I love to do when I'm talking to sellers is I have them share a lot about the house with me. Hey, share me a little bit about what's going on in your home. Have you done any recent updates? So I ask about that. Oh no, we haven't. Okay. Share with me some of the finishings. What do you absolutely love about your house? I love asking a question like this because it already kind of puts you in their mind as an expert. But you say, listen, if we were around the corner at a Starbucks with a buyer, what is the one thing that I should share with them about what you've loved about your home that would make them want to buy it? So I ask a question like that all the time because it brings in emotion, right? And then they start sharing more with the house. Hey, I love this, or maybe this needs updated. We haven't had to do it because it's been great. It's solid bones. They'll start sharing. And once they do share, then my question comes in. Listen, I know we talked about this a little bit, but it sounds like you really loved your home and it's been really good to you. What's really causing you to want to make this move? I mean, it sounds like you really love it there. Why do you want to leave? So I love doing it like that because it transitions from sharing the home and the emotion into sharing about their motivation, right? And then it's a true conversation, but you're still getting the information that you need. So you want to connect and you want to make sure that you ask the right questions and do what we call qualifying that lead, right? So you're going to qualify that lead. How do you think that's going to help? What do you think about these questions and how they're going to position you and what they're going to do for the seller?
Well, so far in my life, in my real estate, I have a list of questions that I ask when I sit down with them.
Yep.
Everybody I have sold houses for, I know.
Yep.
We've already had the conversation, and then we sit there and I go through a checklist of questions, those same questions. you know, when you want to move, you know, everything. To me, those are all just natural things you ask.
Yeah,
It's just natural. So now if I'm competing with somebody else who they're talking to two different agents, I wouldn't be there. Jane would.
yeah. But you might be setting the appointment for her, right? So
Yes.
I'm curious, do you see any value in having the answer to these questions when you walk into the,
Oh, yeah, 100%.
okay. What's the value? If you know the answer to these questions walking into it, especially when you're competing with another agent, what's that going to do for you and the client?
You're a heads up.
Mhm.
You're ahead of the game. You already made contact. You know the people's feelings, their wants and their desires.
Yeah. And you can really pinpoint and ultimately focus on what they're going to need in terms of your presentation. So when you go through your presentation, it'll help you talk about you know, that transition in their life of selling this home and moving to the next, whatever the reason might be, right? Because as I mentioned, you know, tons of people are tied to their house, and there's a lot of emotion that comes up. Even if they don't share it all with you, it's there for just about anybody. So great. Participant guide. So there is a quick activity. Let me see. Connecting questions. Yeah. Can you think of any more questions or different ways to phrase them of what you've got here? Is there any that you really like to ask in a certain way? Than these questions that you see on screen? Anything you can think of? I know one of the things that I love to do with timeline, right? Get a feeling for their timeline. When would you like to do this? I always like to dig deep on this one, you know, because you get a lot of fluff answers with this, right? Oh, spring, you know, by fall or whatever. I said, that's awesome. You know, I take their answer and then I ask the wave a magic wand type question. I say, listen, if you know, if everything else were out the door, and you could just wave a magic wand, nothing else mattered, but wave a magic wand, when exactly would you like to be moved? Right? And it kind of takes that away from the idea of, oh, we'll do it in the spring or whatever, instead of trying to give you a timeline that's based on other things. Especially that idea of spring, right? Well, a lot of people say, oh, I want to wait till spring because then I'll get the most money. Sometimes that's not the best option for them, but they won't tell you it's because I've heard spring was the best time to get the most money. So sometimes it's a way of asking the question in a different light so that you can get the right answer, because we want to know when do they actually want to move as opposed to when they think is best, right?
Yep.
Because part of that for us is making sure that we're giving them the right advice as their agent. So always assess expectations. But at this point, you should then know, once you go through the LPT mama type questions, you should know, is it time for an appointment or what's going on? So we need to then categorize them based on that, that follow-up plan, right? So same thing, A, B, or C. Able, ready, willing to do business now or within the next couple of weeks. Daily follow-up, moving to an appointment. If you haven't already, you should be asking for an appointment at the end of that conversation. Because one thing that we know about time is it does what to deals? Time,
Makes it go away.
yeah, time kills all deals and makes them go away, right? So the urgency on your part to move forward, set the appointment, and get that listing or talk about that listing is important. And then if they're not ready right now, but they are ready within the next couple of months, they're listed to a B, right? And I would venture to say even farther, if they're ready within the next couple of months, at this point, you should probably be shooting for a meet, unless they're saying absolutely not, and whatever the reason might be, you try for an appointment and can't necessarily get it. You want to go, they should be in your B category. They should be in the next 2 weeks to 2 months, up to 90 days. They need to be in the database. You're calling every couple of days, maybe let rest a week or something along those lines. But the follow-up is pretty consistent and pretty immediate. And then, of course, the C, right? Typically, they're in a C category for the lack of motivation for some reason, or there's an event that's going to hold them back, like a job or something along those lines. They're able and ready, but they're not willing to just do it right now. So typically after 3 months or longer, something's going to happen, something's going on. You put them in the database and you make sure you touch them within the next month, and then the next month after that. So you're focused on getting them the information they need and making sure they remember that you're there, so you don't miss out on that appointment. Okay. And definitely put them in a SMART plan. How else can you make sure that you're staying in touch with the right people? What do you typically do, Benny? In these categories?
I do so much community stuff that I'm just always with the people.
Yeah.
Food banks every other weekend, giving out food, church meetings, Bible studies, walking my dog. We're pretty much social people.
So do you have a C category, or is everybody that's coming to you in A or B, like they're soon?
To me, yes, I haven't. They're probably, everybody I know is probably a C until they say they're ready or thinking about it.
Well, that's what. So if they're not thinking about it now, they're off this list altogether, right? They're part of your sphere. So if they are thinking about it, then they should be in as a C. So what does that database look like for you, and how do you keep in touch with it?
What I do, which ended, when did it stop? Whenever, what was her name? Murphy. You weren't here when Murphy was here, were you?
No.
Right before you came, there was a girl that worked here named Murphy. And what she did is she helped me each month with the newsletter, and I emailed it out to my database.
Gotcha.
And I'd been doing that for 5 years.
Okay, good. Good.
So,
that's definitely a great way to stay consistently in touch.
And so Murphy left. So I've been thinking about using Claudia if she does the same thing.
Okay.
I don't know yet because I haven't made the phone call.
Okay.
Because I've been trying to figure it out myself. Then I got bits and pieces. I got templates on my command. I've got what I had done before on my command, but Vinny's not a tech person.
Yeah.
And that's why I had Murphy come into my life. Our system before command, I had it down.
Yep.
I had my touches, my emails, everything was just press a button. I had it all set up. Been doing it for years. But then they changed their command, threw this old man off with this new stuff. And that's why I got Murphy.
Yeah.
Mags. And so, the next step in this for me is to have a new Murphy for me.
Gotcha. To be able to help with that that command, get your newsletter out, everything like that.
Right, once a month.
Good. Good. That's
And
definitely a good way to stay in touch.
it's only been a few months we've not been doing it since Murphy left.
Yep. Okay. We're not going to do this one. We will talk about converting leads to contacts, right? So obviously, one of the first things, once you have the idea of motivation, that's kind of that first step in turning that lead, that warm lead, that somebody is interested in doing something. Finding out that motivation and making that connection is super important to then go for the appointment, right? You're asking for an appointment. In doing that, one of the steps of the process is to ask for a referral as well, right? Through the process, in the appointment, asking for the referral can be super powerful. It's kind of this idea of, well, what happens when you buy a car? What happens when you go shopping for something specific? I forget what the name of it, what it's called, but there's an actual there's a name of it. When you see something and you get familiar with something, that something, then you see more of it through your life. So if you're going to shop for Toyotas, you see Toyotas everywhere, right? If you're going to shop for a pair of Levi's, you'll see Levi's commercials and all that. Not that that stuff wasn't there before. It's just that your mind now reminds you of it, and it makes that connection. Same thing happens for real estate. You're talking about real estate, you're talking about your move throughout the rest of your sphere. So it comes up in conversation. People then find out about others that are moving. So asking for a referral as part of that process can be super beneficial, because a lot of people that are moving end up being in the same stage of life as others for those milestones, having babies, new jobs, and things like that. So they'll often talk about it, and then they'll be notified others. So
I gotta get rid of my dog.
okay.
Maggie. Go. Jedediah. Go. Go nag your mother. My children.
So when you're talking to somebody, how do you typically ask for an appointment?
To be totally honest with you, almost every single one of our clients have called us.
And said, hey, come on over.
Right.
Right.
I've
So
never been,
go ahead.
I've never been in the other situation except for once. And that was through our door knockers.
Yep.
And that was a right away thing.
Yeah.
We came
So-
over, listed it.
In getting the goals that you want to get to, because if I'm correct in assuming that was around 20 closings to be where you need to be, right? So the likelihood that it's just going to come to you out of your sphere and network is pretty slim to get that 20. So you're going to find yourself in situations where you're talking to referrals, you're talking to people that might know you, and you might know, but you don't have the same relationship you have with your sphere. So you're going to
Correct.
want to make that connection with your LPT mama, going through the motions and asking them the questions, getting to know them. And towards the end of that conversation, if they do qualify, meaning they're an A and they're ready to make that move, or they're in the B category and they're close to it, you should be setting an appointment. Typically what I do when I set an appointment is I present them with kind of this 4-step process, right? The first thing is I talk to them about why we're meeting. I then talk to them about why me, right? Then I remind them of the motivation they shared with me. And then I tie it down. So why are we meeting? Why me? Why not some other agent, right? There's however many 30,000 agents or whatever it is in Northern Virginia. Remind of motivation and then tie it down. And that would sound something like this. If I'm making an appointment offer. Benny, I appreciate you sharing everything with me. So why don't we do this? Let's go ahead and get together. We're going to go over the entire selling process. Since it's been a while for you, I'm going to go over everything from beginning to end so that you're one of the most educated sellers out there. We're going to talk about your home price and where you would fit in the market. I'm going to talk a little bit about what I do differently than other agents and how I'm going to get you the most money in the shortest amount of time. And ultimately, we're getting together so that we can get you to Florida, get to your retirement home, and get you out of the cold weather. Fair enough?
Sounds
Right?
good.
Why are we meeting? Why me? And typically the why me will be some reflection of what I just talked about with them going through the LPT mama, right? Why are you leaving? Well, we're getting out of the cold. So maybe their retirement and they're heading to Florida. I'll show you exactly what I did for Joe when I sent him to Florida, or I sent him to North Carolina for retirement, right? So why me? So sometimes I try to make that as personal as possible to make that connection. And then I'm also saying, hey, the real reason we're doing this, all this other stuff doesn't make any deal, right? Yes, you're going to need to know the home sale process and what that looks like, but you probably don't care that much about it. What you care about, what's making you move, is retirement in Florida. So that's what we're going to put a plan in place for. Does that sound good? And then I'm
Sounds
tying
good.
it down. Sound good? See, does that sound good? And that wasn't even a question to you, but you're obligated to tie in. So as soon as you tie down the statement, use that statement. Sound good, fair enough. Those are tie down statements. They're going to agree with you. And then you say, great, what works best for you? Afternoons or mornings? Right? And then you close them as soon as they agree with your tie down statement. And that's what that looks like. Any questions on it?
No. To be honest with you, I haven't had any problems. The problem with me is the motivation of the lead gen. Granted, every single listing I had has been close friends
Right.
and family. So pretty much everything you're talking about would be strangers.
Yes and no. So you likely know some of this stuff and might know it in natural conversation anyway, but you should still be going through it with the people that you know. Sometimes they might be a little more comfortable with you going ahead of time, so you're leveraging that to get an appointment before you go through the questions, which is okay too. You always want to be careful then though, if you know or don't know if you're in competition with anybody.
I have no competition.
So sometimes you might not know, right?
I don't.
You've gotten every listing you went on though, but they, like you said, they were all close friends, right?
Mm-hmm.
So at some point you're going to start to venture away from that. So you want to get in the right habits of making sure that you have all the information to be able to do the best presentation. And then Jane will go on it, right?
I still have no competition. There's just pests out there.
So once you pre-qualify and once you kind of go through that, I think what you're saying, the motivation for lead gen, well, it sounds to me like you're doing it not thinking it's lead gen, but you're lead genning mostly to your sphere, which is okay because that's a great source. You want to make sure you're tacking on that referral thing though. So you got to make sure you're asking for that. Because yeah, people are going to say, Vinny is an awesome guy. You know, he's always helped me. He's always been there. He and his wife are just fantastic. And I wouldn't use anybody else, right?
I would say 100% of the times that I'm talking about real estate with any of my friends, it's asking for referral.
Good. And
It's
that's
not ask.
Yep. That's exactly what you should be doing. You need to be doing it because ultimately, you know, from past experience that your sphere isn't going to be enough to get you to where you need to go. So in order to get where you need to go, you need to be asking for their sphere as well. And keeping top of mind so that, yeah, they're probably going to use you. And that's proven true. But you want to make sure they're saying to their friends and family to use you as well. Because that's where it becomes powerful. Right? So getting into that idea of pre-qualifying so that you make sure they're ready and you're spending the right amount of time is pretty important, right? Understanding that motivation and asking those right questions. These are all things that I've said before. Position yourself as the expert to be able to win the listing, allow you to price the home to sell for the most amount of time in the shortest, or the most amount of money in the shortest amount of time, and set the right expectations. So as you get into those people that you aren't as familiar with, that's what pre-qualifying will allow you to do, right? I have a series of questions around home price, right? Because a lot of realtors will ask it different ways, and then they'll get feedback or kickback from the person selling because they don't have the best rapport. Well, if you ask the right question in the right way, you're going to get the answer almost every time. And two things that a lot of times sellers are afraid to say or don't want to share, especially until you get to the listing appointment, are going to be what they think their home is worth or what they want to sell for, and then what they owe on their mortgage. I'll share with you almost 100% of the time, I'd say 99% of the time, I got what price they wanted. Probably 95% of the time, I got mortgage information as well, 90 to 95% of the time. And I asked them like this. I'd say, great, I just went through them sharing the home with me, what they loved about it, why they want to make this move. And I would say, oh, that's great, Vinny. Thank you so much for sharing that with me. I'm curious, what do you expect top dollar to be for your home? So when I say top dollar, what do you expect? Most of the time, they're going to share it with me. They're just going to say it right off the bat. If they don't, then I would simply follow it up with this. I'm just curious to what your expectations are for what the home will sell for and what the market is in your neighborhood. And then they're going to either tell me the price they expect to get for their home or what's been happening in the neighborhood that they've been looking at. Either way, that tells me what they want to get for their home, right? Because they're going to start sharing those numbers. On Zillow, I saw this. 2 houses down, I saw this. But then I keep asking questions about it, right? Especially if they're sharing neighborhood sales. Great. How does your home compare with that home? Is it the same square footage? Does it have the same amount of bedrooms? Do you remember the address? And then I can look it up myself. And I say, great, thank you for sharing. I'm not saying things like, no, it's never going to sell for that, or I'm not going over all that on the phone. I'm just getting the right information so I can best serve the client. So you're pre-qualifying and getting that stuff up front so that you're not surprised when you go into the meeting with a person that you're not so comfortable with that you could sit there and have coffee and have a completely different conversation, right? Because you're there for real estate. And then the second question is going to be about mortgage. And I would just jump right into it right after I'm having the conversation about price. And I'd say, so about what's left on your mortgage, or do you still have a mortgage on the property? Yes, about what's left on that. And that's it. 99%, 95% of the time, customer just spout it off because I'm asking in conversation. Why do you need to know that? Well, we prepare a net sheet for all of our sellers so that they understand exactly where they're going to be after everything's said and done about what's left on your mortgage. And I just ask again. If I don't get it, I don't get it, and I move on after 2 times of asking. But those are the toughest questions to get answers to. And usually by asking in those ways, you get them. But you pre-qualify and you understand. But that's also going to help you understand what level of motivation they're at. Because if they're sharing those things with you, you've gotten some rapport, you're the expert, they're willing to open up and share that information with you, even if you're within competition too. So that's the pre-listing questionnaire, the LPT Mama we were talking about. And you can grab this from your toolkit here. There's a link. I think I have some printed out still in the room if you want it. It's kind of the same stuff, but it's all good information to have, right? How did you hear about me? Where are you moving? What's motivating you to move there? LPT Mama information. It's very similar, very similar. Any questions about it?
Nope.
Great. Well, then the next thing that's super important is the listing presentation. So you can log into Command to review listing presentations and designs. It'll go over kind of setting everything up. This is super important.
I took the class with Mike.
Yep.
Well, I think it was last week. Maybe it was last week on the listings. So
Right.
I've started updating. I have one from what I made before.
Okay.
And so I am working on a new one to bring it up to date.
Awesome. Good. And this is pretty important, right? Going through it so that you have the right information in front of the people that you're trying to win that appointment to is very important. Getting them the information ahead of time. Most that I knew, they had some kind of presentation they put together and have it sent out, whether that's digitally or physically, completely up to you. At the very least, I would get this out digitally ahead of time. So it's something you can get them sent so they have some information to look at and they can have questions and things like that for you. But you go over the presentation. Ultimately, you're convincing them that you're the expert and you provide them with the right information that they need through this presentation. And it's designed in a way for you to be winning that business. Pre-listing packet's important, makes that experience smooth, shorter than it otherwise would have been. And one huge thing, this is just like any other scripting and probably more important, is you want to make sure that the first time you do it is not in front of somebody, in front of a client, that is. The first time you do it, you should be practicing with somebody else. So in this case, I would make sure you and your wife go back and forth and practice, right? You have the information down, but you have it down for winning against competition. Does she? Probably. Can you get better at it? Probably. Right?
You always get better.
Always get better. So I recommend listing presentation practice, buyer consult presentation practice, and regular scripting practice on a monthly, if not weekly basis, so that you're doing it and doing it well. But that's ultimately the goal of following up qualifying, pre-qualifying, getting the appointment so that you can do the presentation. We're not gonna go ahead and practice now though, Benny. I know you're disappointed. Unless you want to.
No, I'm fine.
Okay. Great. Well, that is it for today, Benny. Anything else
Sit
you
there
want to talk about?
Yeah, sit there 1 second.
Okay,